This Future Construct podcast episode is supported by Applied Software. Applied Software is on a mission to transform industry by empowering their clients and championing innovation with real-world expert consultants. So visit asti.com, it's ASTI.com, and please let them know that we here at Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Future Construct podcast. I'm your host, Amy Peck. I am so excited for today's guest. She is a globally known futurist and the founder of the Futures Intelligence Group. Cathy Hackl, welcome.
Thanks, Amy. Glad to be here.
So, Cathy, you are probably the busiest person I know. So, A, I'm thrilled that you were able to join us today. But tell us, A, what is being a futurist? And then B, tell us about your new company.
Yeah, so, I am a professionally trained futurist. And I, like you mentioned, I have the Futures Intelligence Group, where we do futures research and consulting. So the easiest way to explain what a futurist does is we trade in uncertainty. So what I mean by this is, for example, we look at all the weak signals and all the trends and try to put two together and not only make sense of the trends and the signals, but think about second and third order effects of how things change. And in doing so, we help companies think through, potential futures that lay ahead. There's not just one future. I think it's really important to explain this. Like, futurists don't predict the future. We try to prepare people for potential futures. No one really knows what's going to happen. I mean, there's algorithms that are getting better at predicting things, right? But there's so many different things that could happen. So it's about thinking about the potential futures that lay ahead, what's plausible, what's possible, and thinking through those. So asking what if, I think, is a basic question of being a futurist.
So that's really interesting. And I'm glad you brought that up because, even when we were talking, before getting started today, I like the fact that you kind of clarified different futures because, to your point, of course, there are many different outcomes and possibilities, and there's future of tech, there's sort of future of industry. So what are some of the trends that you are seeing? I mean, you also have deep expertise in, XR, AR, VR, MR, all of the Rs. And so what are some of the trends that you're seeing in really, all of the technologies?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I'm a tech futurist because exactly like you mentioned, I have deep expertise in emerging technologies. But when you do strategic foresight, which is what futurists do, you have to look at multiple parts. It's called STEEP. So you look at society, tech, environmental, economical, political, culture. You look at all the different things and try to make sense. It's, because things don't happen in isolation, right? So it's thinking through all of those. So for me, currently, some of the things that I'm exploring right now that I find quite interesting are multiple things. It's what I call the direct to avatar economy. So it is the idea that that virtual economies and virtual goods, like in-game sales, for example, if someone's a gamer and they buy things in game or things like that, that's a huge economy that's starting to kind of pick up. And you have, obviously, blockchain. So NFTs, huge thing right now that's related to the direct to avatar economy. I believe the latest statistic that I read that really spoke volumes to me was that the virtual goods economy is going to be worth $400 billion by 2025, right? So those numbers are really interesting to look at. You have NFTs breaking records, front and back right now, $1 million drops, $3 million drops, and an NBA Top Shot. I mean, just things like that. So, and it's all related to this direct to avatar economy. And the economy and the, how we will finance and how we will do commerce in these virtual spaces, which you and I know in some way is linked very much to the metaverse, right? The idea of the metaverse. So I explore direct to avatar. I explore a lot of things related to the metaverse, actually Thinkers 50. They're considered the Oscars of management thinking. Name me or coin me the CEO's Guide to the Metaverse. So those are places that I'm spending a lot of time in right now, thinking through and working with clients.
That's exciting. And just for the edification of our listeners, so non-fungible tokens, can you just explain NFTs, just in case people don't know?
Yeah, so non-fungible tokens, NFTs, like you mentioned, one of the easiest ways to explain is that if I have $1 and I give you $1, that dollar is worth the same, right? It's worth the same anywhere. It's $1. But if I have a Babe Ruth trading card from a certain year and you have a Babe Ruth trading card from, say, a certain year, even if we exchange, they don't have the same value because they could be certain different years. They could be in different qualities. They could be different serial numbers. So that's what it means when it's non-fungible, is that one doesn't equal 1 to 1. It's not an equal value. Another thing is that non-fungible tokens are traceable. So you know who's the specific owner of something. And because they're on the blockchain, there's a level of transparency as well. So that's a very basic level explanation of what an NFT is.
Yeah.
But yeah, just for people that might not understand or that are hearing the words and don't totally wrap their heads around it.
I think we're all getting admired in the kind of new vernacular. So at first there was this confusion around AR, VR, MR, XR, and now we have all of this new with every emerging tech there are a lot of acronyms. So I just want to make sure that we covered that one. And so I also have been reading your work on Forbes, and I have to tell you, your take on the way you report XR is so fascinating, and you really found these interesting lanes to discuss. So what are some of the exciting things that you're seeing in the XR space that maybe if it hasn't been released yet, then don't share, but maybe some of your more recent articles?
Yeah, so it was really interesting because for me, Forbes has been this exploratory kind of place to share ideas and explore themes and topics. And someone said the other day to me, like, I see you everywhere. And I said, well, the thing is, like, some people paint and some people sing or compose music. Like, I express my creativity, and my creative outlet is through writing and through really taking these mind melding ideas and really exploring them. So that's, if you see me everywhere, that's why. This is my creative outlet. So, I wrote a really interesting article. I think it was July of last year. It was called "The Metaverse is Coming, and It's a Very Big Deal." And I think that's been a very successful piece that's spoken to a lot of people to try to explain what the metaverse is. Because this is really, the metaverse is, oh my gosh, it's like a convergence of what you and I have been working on in the VR space for years, but also artificial intelligence and now NFTs and all these different things kind of coming together in one place, gaming, and there's so many things coming. So what I would say to people is what the metaverse is, because that's always the question, right? When it comes to trends, like, what am I seeing? So what is the metaverse? I think we're still defining what the metaverse is, but the easiest way I explain to people is when the world becomes machine readable, searchable, likable, clickable sort of way. And it could be a virtual world in a fully simulated virtual space, or it could be our real world with digital content put in front of us. So the metaverse is kind of a very broad term. I was very lucky to be able to work in Magic Leap for a few years. And our futurist was actually Neil Stevenson, who I believe is the person that coined the term metaverse. So really thinking through how we interact with the virtual world in our virtual representations of ourselves in virtual spaces as well. So it's a kind of a really interesting topic of discussion, because people, I think, over-index and always think Ready Player One, right? Or they tend to go to the Oasis without thinking through, what does the world look like when I have augmented reality glasses?
So speaking of that, those are, imminently coming. Apple, Facebook, Google bought Focals by North. So how do you think that will really sort of change the way we think about, AR, and how do we move from, mobile AR, to these wearables?
Well, I think, Apple had done some announcements about, I think they're called Apple AR clips, Apple clips, I think. And then there are these little round QR codes that are kind of funny looking. And I think we're going to start to see them pop up in more places. And that's one way of priming the market, to understand, like, point your camera at something and something will happen, right? So it's that kind of idea of thinking QR codes and, in this immediate situation where something pops up in front of you. So I think that's one way that, brands like Apple are priming the market for that. I think this is where I kind of really think through it. And I'm like, right now, I'm talking to you on a computer, which is a flat screen. I've got my phone, which is my lifeline in some ways, right? But we're living in these little square flat boxes right? And once we move into glasses, if you look at absolutely everything around you, it has volume, it is 3D, it has dimension, right? So to borrow a quote from our friend Tom Emmerich, he says, we are 3D beings in a 3D world, right? So I think our content should be 3D. That's where I think when we move to glasses, and I always see these, representations of what that future could look like. And it's usually flat screens in front of us. I'm like, do we really want to see flat screens in front of us if the world is the canvas? I think that's where things are going to get interesting. And the content evolves and becomes more 3D, 360. It has volume. Amy, and one of the things we can definitely talk about is volumetric video, which I'm very bullish on as well.
This episode of the Future Construct podcast is supported by the amazing team at Applied Software. They have solutions for any modern project. Applied Software is on a mission to transform industry by empowering their clients and being the champions of innovation with their real-world expert consultants. They have a comprehensive suite of solutions for AEC, MEP, and manufacturing with a singular focus to help you achieve higher performance. So with software, training, support, consulting, and custom development, Applied Software has you covered for all of your workflow needs. BIM Designs is proud to be a client and partner of Applied Software. So visit their website at asti.com, that's ASTI.com. And don't forget to tell them that we here at Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. Oh, so let's go right into that. That's a perfect segue. So explain to everyone what volumetric video is and how it differs from traditional video, and then some of the trends you're seeing in that world.
Yeah, so volumetric, let's start with 2D video, right? 2D video is flat. There's pans and tilts and zooms and all that sort of thing. Volumetric video is video that has volume, right? You're able to engage with that video through different angles, moving around that video. So people always think volumetric video, they equate it to hologram. So that's okay, let's go there. So think Princess Leia, right? We're not there yet with being able to see a hologram without a device. Right now you have to see volumetric video, let's say through a phone or an iPad or, a head-mounted display. But that's kind of where we're going, where it's actual volumetric scans of humans, of people doing things, whether it is acting, dancing, speaking, doing all sorts of things. And that's where I think it gets really interesting. And someone asked me the other day, why am I so bullish on volumetric video? And I said, look, when we move to glasses, like I mentioned, I'm going to want content in front of me that is volumetric. Why would I want my content to be flat if it's in my reality? Just like I see the world, I'm going to want to see those digital objects have volume. That's one part. And then another really important part of the work that you and I have been doing, and all of our colleagues in the industry, is that I believe we are all working on creating the printing press of the future, right? With VR and AR and volumetric video. And that's where I get really excited thinking about the possibilities in the future, when, we'll still have books, but what do stories look like in the future? They'll probably be volumetric. It'll probably be some type of volumetric video or holographic 3D asset. So I think that's where it gets truly, truly exciting.
So I think that really touches on a lot of trends we've been seeing too around, we saw Travis Scott in Fortnite, the weekend in TikTok, and this sort of, blending of gaming worlds, which are already 3D and entertainment. So do you see volumetric video kind of being an extension of that and enabling us those more kind of personalized experiences with whether it be sporting figures or entertainment figures or our favorite, musicians or bands?
Yeah, I think it's the next step. To me, the closest thing you can get to a human is a scan of a human that looks like the human, that has certain nuances, that, has volume. That to me, in honesty, is like the most human type of technology, because it is a scan of a real person. So I'm, from a video and gaming perspective, I think that's where we're going to be going in some ways, right? We're going to choose between being our more virtualized selves, like, how Genies has 3D avatars, they're beautiful. So we'll choose between being more, the more avatar cartoony looking sorts of representations to actually being ourselves. So there's going to be kind of we're kind of ebb and flow between both of those. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to think through there. One thing that I'm also excited about from a volumetric capture part of the industry is thinking through how we can use volumetric video to train machine learning. Right now, if you're training if you're training an algorithm to understand different data sets, and it's pictures of cats or pictures of people, but those are flat. Right? Those are flat. There's certain nuances that they don't get. But if you train it with actual volumetric assets that have volume, that have nuances about skin tone, that have nuances about faces and noses and, and eyes and hair, like everything, I think that's so incredibly powerful. And we're starting to see a lot of interest at Avatar Dimension on using volumetric capture data sets to do machine learning. So yeah, very excited about that, because that could help reduce bias. And that's obviously a big issue when it comes to data sets.
And so you said something that I think is really interesting and something that we often forget, and that there's so much fear around technology. But you mentioned that, you think the next best, most human experience is, volumetric, being with a virtual human, representative of ourselves. And so, how do you see communication evolving and social media and how we interact with one another in this digital landscape?
I mean, I'm excited. I think it's really funny, because when I have these conversations, I'll have people talk and say, VR is very isolating. And I'm like, not really. I mean, if you're doing it by yourself, yes. But, a lot of us that do spend quite a good time in social VR, we have great times. It's been a lifesaver to be able to go in there in Outspace, in Horizon, in Spatial, and kind of have these meetings and these conversations and feel like I'm there with my friends. So I think we'll start using these technologies, interacting with them. We'll also, in some way, and this is kind of where I'm going with this, is kind of what I call business to robot to consumer. So what does Alexa, and I'm sorry if I woke her up, what does our virtual assistant look like in the future? Right now, it's a gadget on, in my case, in my kitchen counter, right? But what does that look like in the future? And I think that, we as humans tend to react really positively to things that are, more human looking, let's say, without, when you get to the uncanny valley, there's issues there, of course, but we tend to react a little bit, more to that type of embodiment. And I think that in some ways that's where it's going. If anyone saw the Amazon commercial during the Super Bowl, where the Amazon's virtual assistant was actually embodied by Michael B. Jordan, that was a really interesting representation of the embodiment of virtual assistant. So I'm not saying it's going to be Michael B. Jordan, but I think, it'll be interesting to think about what the virtual assistants look like in the future, and not just virtual assistants, but, friends, colleagues. I mean, it'll be quite interesting to kind of think through that in the future and how it works.
Yeah, it might be interesting to be able to sort of, reskin your virtual assistant to be, whomever you'd like that to be. I sort of like that idea.
Well, I'm down for Michael B. Jordan any day. So yeah.
So, going back to the metaverse, there's so much confusion about it. And, to your point, the last thing I'd like to go in and see is banner ads,
yeah,
please make those go away. But how will just sort of our everyday lives and for example, like advertising and marketing happen in this 3D realm? Do you see sort of a different construct emerging?
I do. And you can see it in gaming already. Like, how do brands enter gaming spaces, right? Is it a full on in your face ad? No, it's usually some type of partnership where, Louis Vuitton releases certain skins or outfits or, or accessories in League of Legends, or there's just so many things. Or for example, the Little Nas X concert in Roblox, you could buy his skin. You could buy an avatar of him, and they made a lot of money during that concert. So yeah, I think it's going to be a process. It's going to be organic. I think the brands that, in full honesty, like I work with brands trying to enter that space. Brands and businesses that are trying to figure out how do they enter the metaverse and the virtual goods and the NFT world. That's kind of what I'm doing right now with a lot of my consulting clients is, what are the ways you can start entering these spaces that make sense? So right now it's a lot of partnerships, a lot of talking to, different video game studios or different companies and trying to figure out what is the smart way to get in and dip your toes. What is an experiment you can do, but also how do you create a full on, a full on strategy for it. So yeah, I think it has to be organic. It has to be done in a smart way, especially with younger consumers. I think they're so savvy that they know when an ad's been put in front of them. Like my kids don't watch ads normally because they're, Hulu or Netflix or Disney Plus, right? So whenever we watch something that does have an ad, they'll be like, "Oh wow, mom, that's an ad." They'll be like, "Oh yeah," they're so surprised by it. But then after a while, we're like, "Oh mom, can you just fast forward that? Like I just want to get to my show." So that's the same thing that's happening, and the brands need to understand when entering this metaverse. These younger consumers, they're on to you. The idea of Madison Avenue as we know it is slowly changing. I'm not going to say it's dying, but it's slowly changing, and it's going to have to adapt.
Oh, good. Well, I have to say personally, because I know you very well, I'm very happy you're at the helm of these things, because then we know we're not going to be fed sort of spoon-fed things that we don't necessarily want to see, and it'll be kind of in context to what we're actually doing and what we care about. So if you're a brand, please call Cathy. Help us all out.
I'm going to say I'm having a lot of fun, Amy, like working on some of the projects I'm doing. I'm having so much fun.
Oh, good, good. Well, I am very pleased. And so this brings me to our last question. It's the question I ask everyone. I bet you're one of the few people that already has this devised, but if you could project yourself 25 years in the future and you could kind of create your favorite, thing or gadget that you use every day that, does not have to be rooted in reality at all, what would it be and what would it do?
So I have to always default to my children. So my children are my best window into the future. I have 3 kids under 10. And I had asked my daughter the other day, she's a little mini master chef. And I asked her, and I said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And she said, "Mommy, I want to be a lunar food scientist." I said, "Okay, not a food scientist, a lunar food scientist." I'm like, "Okay, great." So being that I am a mom and I am a Latina mom, I'm going to want to devise some type of space elevator so I can go see my daughter in her lunar food scientist lab, restaurant, whatever that is, whenever I want, or be able to call her very easily, and bug her every day. So it's some type of space elevator, or I don't know what else it would be called, but some way to pop up into her kitchen every day and check in on her when she's on the moon.
That's great. I don't know if my kids would want me to check in every day, but maybe once a month.
I'm sure she's not going to be happy about it, but I'm a Latina mom. It's going to happen.
Matter.
Period.
It's okay. It's okay. I think that's
she might not answer, but I'm going to do it every day. So.
Well, you're everywhere. You're not hard to find, but I highly recommend following Cathy on Forbes. You've recently done some great work on Clubhouse. You're on Twitter. You're all over. So for those of you listening, follow Cathy if you want to understand the future and the futures better. Cathy, absolute pleasure having you today.
Thanks, Amy. I had a blast.